Distinguished Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka, Mr. Tilakmarpana, Mrs. Sugandhi Kadirgamar, the Leader of Opposition, Mr. Sambandhanam, Honorable the Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, the High Commissioner of India, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I am indeed singularly honored to deliver this year Lakshman Kadirgamar Memorial Lecture. In many ways, Mr. Kadirgamar represented the best which Sri Lanka has to offer on the global stage. A fine embodiment of intellect, diplomatic skills, integrity, eloquence, and above all, a keen desire of friendship, all rolled into one. He was not only a keen student of law, not only a profound practitioner of law, not only an extraordinary administrator of law, but when he arrived on the diplomatic scene as a very distinguished Foreign Minister of India, in many ways, he became a giant, a diplomat of outstanding repute, a man who could foresee the challenges which the world may have to encounter. And as the distinguished Foreign Minister rightly pointed out, he was one of the first practitioners of diplomacy who could foresee the threat which terrorism posed and called upon the civilized world to speak in one voice. He was also a great friend of India, and in particular of my leader, former Prime Minister, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He understood the value of Indo-Sri Lankan relationship, which he described as one of irreversible excellence. I keep on speaking in India, I keep on speaking on different platforms in the world, but when Mrs. Sugandhi Kadirgamar took the trouble of coming all the way to New Delhi to invite me personally, and the kind of personal respect I have for her late distinguished husband, I just could not say no, regardless of all my commitments there. I have consciously chosen the topic of evolution of India's constitutional and democratic polity in the last 70 years. India and Sri Lanka have seen winds of change simultaneously impacting both the countries. The quest for freedom, the quest for liberty, the overpowering desire for sovereignty, and above all, keen desire to have a better future for the respective people of these two countries. It was quite natural because the bond is not only political, but the bond is civilizational and cultural. Lord Buddha was born in Nepal, got spiritual awakening and enlightenment in my state of Bihar in Bodh Gaya, gave a profound framework of compassion and in love for the people of the world with his philosophy of Buddhism, which became a very significant mission in Sri Lanka and today has become a profound bond between two countries. We are equally attached to the story of Lord Ram, and the story of Lord Ram cannot be complete without reference to Sri Lanka. Tomorrow I'm going to go to have the darshan of Lord Hanuman because apart from a spiritual heritage, that is also an important center for tourists of India to visit. The story of Sri Lanka and India is equally relevant when two eminent spiritual thinkers, Swami Vivekananda and Angarika Dharampala, another profound spiritual leader of Sri Lanka, met. They laid the framework of a new spiritual awakening of these two countries at a time when an impression was created because of colonial rule that intellect is not available in this part of the world. They not only showed intellect, but a great spiritual awakening, reinforcing the profound heritage of the people of these two countries. I remember when in my last visit in 2013, I had the privilege to attend the release of a postage stamp by Sri Lankan government on Vivekananda. And the request was made to me that similarly the government of India must release a stamp on Angarika Dharampala. I was then in a position, I said I'll try my best. But the majestic hand of destiny had a different command for me. When the Narendra Modi government came to power, it was my duty as the Communication Minister of India to release a stamp on Ankara Dharampala, released by the President of India, then Dr. Pranab Mukherjee. This relationship of history, heritage, and sharing has also to suffer the scourge of colonialism. And the colonial master was the same. At least they left one good thing. We both speak English too. But what is important is the freedom movement of India and the freedom movement of Sri Lanka evolved like twin freedom movement, fired by the same ethos of democracy, liberty, and peace. And therefore, there was close bonding between the leaders of the freedom movement of the two countries as well. Indo-Sri Lankan relationship has not matured, not only at the people-to-people level, not only at the level of competitive game of cricket. At times you defeat us, of late we are defeating you, but all in the spirit of sportsmanship. But even at the political level, regardless of political divide, there is great maturity in the relationship. Recently, a Prime Minister visited India and was a guest of honor in the Global Cyberspace Conference. This morning, I signed an MOU for extending the potential of India's digital power for the development of Sri Lanka. And I have to state one thing very clearly, that India has been and will remain a steadfast and true partner to the people of Sri Lanka in their quest for progress, peace, and prosperity. Our approach has not been one of demanding privileges or rights to projects, but rather a desire to contribute to the achievement of Sri Lanka's development objective as they are established by Lankan themselves. India has sought to develop innovative mechanisms for implementing these initiatives, such as grants and concessional lines of credit, which are tailored to the requirement and capacities of our partners in Sri Lanka, to ensure that these do not become another channel leading to a debt trap. I have very consciously and deliberately chosen this topic of evolution of India's democratic and constitutional polity. I'm grateful to the distinguished foreign minister for giving a very expansive introduction of mine. But I speak on this topic of great interest to my heart, wearing many hats. First and foremost, as an activist in the polity of India, which commenced when I became an activist in the student movement. Second, as a student of India's constitution. Third, as a practitioner of law. And fourth, as a lawmaker and little experience of governance. I need to very briefly state that my party has been kind enough to give me in charge of 8 states of India. And it is now 30 years that I have been campaigning in my country. Therefore, I have also seen the evolution of India's constitutional and democratic polity. India is a vast country of thousands of years. And what is the basic philosophy of India? It was espoused in the Rig Veda, Ekam Sadavepra Bahuda Vadanti. Truth is one, wise men interpret it differently. I have my own perception of truth, and you have your own. You follow your own path, I will follow my own. You respect my path, and I will respect your path. Because in the ultimate analysis, your path and my path culminates at the same destination, where is lying the ultimate truth. Paramasatya, infinite, omnipresent, irrefutable, and perennial. With this kind of philosophy, a different kind of accommodation comes. And what is that accommodation? Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole world is one. And the third, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya. Let the whole world remain happy. When this kind of philosophical underpinning propel you, then regardless of the extreme diversity of India, there is stress on unity, which you all need to understand. And what democracy has done post-independence to become a great bridge, a great leveler to reinforce that unity. Therefore, I must tell you, India is secular, not because our constitution says so only. India is secular because Sarva Dharma Sambhav is the essence of India's heritage, which means whatever be your faith, ultimately the same path leads to the same destination. And India has been the place of birth and expansion of 3 great religions of the world: Hinduism, Buddhism, and Sikhism. And today India is home to the second largest number of those who follow Islam. We have those who follow monotheism, those who follow polytheism, or those who are atheists. They don't recognize God. But all exist and coexist because of this great accommodative spirit of India. When India became free in 1947, we were 20 major languages, each one spoken by a substantial number of people. Obviously, majority of them spoke Hindi, but then there were smaller languages, dialects. The total number was 16,000 only. There was also a daunting challenge. We had 562 royalties, which we used to call estates. Many of them had monarchical tradition, and some bordered on the divine. They considered the God has given us, sent us to govern the people I preside over. Another challenge was how to incorporate the shades of various strands of India's freedom movement. Obviously, the great leader Mahatma Gandhi espoused non-violence as the only way by which we can redeem our pledge, namely we can become free. And he never compromised on non-violence. But there were other strands too, which differed. But what is the beauty of India's freedom movement? Violent initiative never became mainstream. And ultimately, they had also to assimilate into the larger narrative, non-violent narrative of India's freedom movement. And therefore, it is a matter of extraordinary, I would say, appreciation that in India, any violent movement has never become mainstream. We all need to recognize that. India's freedom movement was singularly fortunate to be led by many good leaders. Obviously, Jawaharlal Nehru was the first prime minister, had his own preeminence. But let us not forget the great contribution of Sardar Patel, the deputy prime minister, who laid the bonds of a unity of India by forging the merger of more than 560 states of India into the larger narrative of India, made them sign the annexation and also respect the constitution. I think that is indeed a great effort. Maulana Azad remained true to the idea of India in spite of the pulls of partition. Subhash Chandra Bose has a different view but remains an iconic figure. And Bhagat Singh, he had different view. He was hanged by judicial process, is still questioned, but he remains firmly fixed in the psyche of India as a great leader. I think one of the greatest contribution of these freedom movement leaders was that they trusted the goodness of ordinary Indians. And when we were framing the constitution, there was a lot of debates. And I would request those present here, if they get time, go through the debates of the Constituent Assembly. We shall trust ordinary Indian, give them the right to vote, regardless of their literacy, community, religion, or even gender. I hardly need to tell you that India gave voting right to all the women of India when many other countries were still debating those issues. When I speak today and talking of gender justice, I need to compliment Sri Lanka because one of the first women prime ministers of India, Shrimavu Bandaranaike, ultimately was popularly elected by the people of Sri Lanka way back in 1965. And next year, Srimati Indira Gandhi again was elected in 1966 as the Prime Minister of India. In many ways, these twin countries made a very profound statement of gender justice and women empowerment as far as democratic polity is concerned. Today we have great representation of women in the village bodies, in the municipal bodies. There is also a proposal for reservation in the parliament pending. And I am very proud for the Prime Minister, the way he has espoused the cause of gender justice. We have got 6 cabinet ministers who are women, 2 ministers of state, 2 key departments, external affairs and defense, are being run by distinguished women ministers. The Speaker of Parliament is a woman. And when the Prime Minister came to power, 2-3 things I would like to just add: Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. Please educate the girl child, empower the girl child. But woman pilot in the Indian Air Force can fly fighter planes was also given in the present government. That is the extent to which we are taking gender justice in a very robust manner in India. Now, when India became free in 1947, those who are senior sitting here need to recall one thing. India was partition. about 1 million people were killed and 10 million were uprooted, having cataclysmic consequences. Some eminent thinkers have observed India has every justification and also the provocation to become a theocratic state, having a religious state. But India did not. We took a very considered call. We shall respect all faith. The state will have no religion, and no religion shall be discriminated. No faith shall be discriminated. I would like to quote a very eminent observation of Pratap Bhanu Mehta, Sujit Chaudhary and Madhav Khosla, who have done a very detailed study recently of India's constitution. And what they say, I quote, almost all the issues that arose in the course of thinking about law in modern constitutional democracy find their most intense expression in the evolution of India's constitutional law. India's constitution was the framework through which the world's largest democracy was brought into being. The future of constitutionalism in the world depends a good deal on the future of India's experiment. The second thing about India's constitutional architecture you need to recall is it not only creates rights, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of movement, but also a charter of non-discrimination, namely giving space to those who are the marginalized, who are the deprived. And many of you would have heard the name of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a great constitutional expert who is now an icon. He was born in a deprived family but rose to great heights. And what he said about India's constitution, I would like to quote here. Political democracy cannot last unless there lies at the base of it social democracy. It means a way of life recognize liberty, equality, and fraternity as principles of life. These principles are not to be treated as separate, but they form a union of trinity in the sense that divorce one from the other is to defeat the very purpose of democracy. Therefore, liberty, equality, and fraternity have to work together, supplementing, complementing each other. A further question arose, ladies and gentlemen, how will this great project work? Ultimately, we gave the constitution, and India's constitution today is debated world over as one of the finest constitution. Amendment was required, it was also done. Rajendra Prasad became the first illustrious president of India. He was also the chairman of the Constituent Assembly. I would like to quote his very eloquent word while commencing the constitution, what he said. After all, a constitution like a machine is lifeless thing. It acquires life because of men who control it and operate, and India needs today but nothing more than a set of honest men who will have the interest of country before them. It requires men of strong character, men of vision, men who will not sacrifice the interest of the country at large for the sake of smaller groups and areas, and who will rise over the prejudices which are born out of these differences. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to say that in the last 70 years, India has the privilege at the national level or at the state level to have leaders answering to the expectation which Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the first president, expected. Democracy ultimately is operated by men who work with it. And I'm singularly proud today to also say that today India is being led by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is not only a very popular national leader, but also an acknowledged global leader seeking to transform India as a country empowered, also extraordinary economy, and ultimately a truly global power. I would like to mention three institutions which have played a crucial role in the evolution of Indian democracy. Ordinary Indians were trusted there has to be a mechanism, how election will be held. Election Commission was given the constitutional status. And the magnitude of the elections of India, I would like to indicate that we call it the biggest festival of democracy. The first election in 1952, 51, the provision was there. There were 173 million registered voters for 53 political parties. In 2014, there are 834 million registered voters voting for 465 political parties. Election was conducted through 930,000 voting centers managed by 6 million personnel. That is the kind of gigantic exercise required to be done. This morning I was talking to higher authorities. You are going to have municipal elections we in India do have frequent elections. Just now we had the state elections of Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh. After a few months it is Tripura, then Meghalaya, then Karnataka. Towards the year end we have Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan. And when the year ends, when the next year commences, by March, April, the general elections after 5 years for having a government for India. Therefore, one of the issues before India which we have taken is we need to have elections at one point in time. Yep, that is a work in progress. We will have to have greater consensus. But there were initial violence in elections. But today I am very again assured to note that violence, booth capturing have become a thing of the past. And today, the purity of elections of India is a matter being talked about. The other institutions in the march of India's constitutional and democratic polity is the Judiciary of India. And I'm very proud about the Judiciary of India. In the last 70 years, India's judiciary has upheld the rights of ordinary Indians, have made interventions when the law was wrongly passed, and has also, this fact should be noted, all the issues which can arise anywhere in the world of gender, of race, of region, of religion, of ethnicity arose in the course of 70 years. And the judiciary in many of these matters gave a very profound judgment which acted as a big balm. I celebrate our judiciary. They came with the novel experiment of public interest litigation for deprived and marginalized. That is an innovation. At times it is abused also. And the Supreme Court itself has said in many judgments that this institution should not be abused. When I talk of judiciary, one thing I would like to observe. Our founding fathers clearly laid down the role. Judiciary has got the right to intervene if the fundamental right of an Indian is invaded. Judiciary has got the right to set aside any law if it is found to be violative of constitutional provisions. But governance must be left to those elected to govern by the people of India and accountable to the people of India. And lawmaking must be left to those elected to make laws by the people of India and accountable to the people of India. The Supreme Court in the famous Keshwanand Bharati case, 13 judges came out of the principle of basic structure. What is the basic structure? Republican form of government, democratic character of government, secularism, independence of judiciary, and separation of power. What is the meaning of basic structure? We sitting in the parliament cannot change a law, amend the constitution, which transcends the basic structure. That principle is also well established. The third institution is the media of India. It is often said Indians are very newsy people, and a lot of news is created from India. Today, India is home to 882 TV channels, out of which only 200 are news channels, and many of them are 24/7 news channels. Only 99,660 newspapers and periodicals are published from India. Now, it is a world of information. Information is power. It is a time of age of communication. Communication is power. Breaking news is there. Instant news is there. But this whole wide spectrum of our news platforms, the newspapers, the magazines, the periodicals, and the television criticize the government. They also caution, they also moderate, they also advise, and at times they encourage also. There are problems of paid news, of many undesirable practices, but I always feel we value the freedom of press as we value the freedom of judiciary, independence of judiciary. And the people of India are the best answers, give the best answer as to how, if there is any deviation in the behavior of media, it should be taken care of. Civil society has grown very well in India. Many of the rights like right to work, right to food, and right to information ultimately were passed because in no measure by the initiative also of these civil society groups. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what are the challenges? In the last 70 years, we have seen the challenge of poverty, the need to give good education and good health care, the problem of left-wing extremism who want that polity, constitution must be changed to the power of the government. But in spite of all these challenges, what is the biggest asset which we have got? Peaceful India remains the biggest constituency. And the quest for peace remains our biggest asset. And those who believe in violent change never became mainstream. Some of them tried to go into elections. They were defeated by the people of India. Therefore, you must understand one thing. And when I'm talking about Mr. Lakshman Kadirgamar Memorial Lecture, I must speak about terrorism. He was so right in foreseeing the pernicious challenge which terrorism poses. Today, many countries sponsor, patronize terrorism as an instrument of state policy. The whole civilized world need to speak in one voice. India firmly believes. Because those who unleash, promote, patronize terrorism have never the well-being of innocent countrymen in their eyes. Ultimately, those who are killed by the terrorist also have human rights or not? Because in my introduction, the distinguished Foreign Minister even mentioned about my past as a human rights activist. I think our view is very clear about this. 1975, I wish to mention, saw the year when emergency was imposed in India because the High Court unseated the then Prime Minister in election petition. Ultimately, the country rose. I had the privilege to work against that movement for the restoration of democracy, independence of judiciary, independence of media. And once elections were announced, ladies and gentlemen, a powerful Prime Minister like Indira Gandhi lost power. And what is the experience of 1975? No political party can think of imposing emergency in India and taking away the rights of the people of India. There is one particular experience of India I would like to tell you, and this is based upon my own experience. People of India give support to any political party at the national level or at the state level if they are able to persuade them to their cause. But after giving them the right, they expect them to show maturity and recognize the idea of India. And if you don't, then you are shown the doors. And for me, the biggest moment was that a leader who never believed in the idea of India and believed in the Constitution, after being elected, took oath under the Constitution in the House of the People and never spoke against the unity and integrity of India. That is the unifying factor which the people of India ultimately create and send the message. You know, when India became free, there were skeptics who said, India is not meant for democracy. What are you doing? Have controlled democracy, have limited democracy. But we believe, no, this is the right way, and this is the chosen way. And today, I just to quote Mr. V.S. Naipaul in his famous book, Mutiny. People everywhere have now ideas who they are and what they owe to themselves. And I'm very proud to say, ladies and gentlemen, 70 years down the line, 1.30 billion people of India know who they are. Namely, they can unseat any political leader, howsoever popular, from power, be it the Prime Minister or the Chief Minister, and any political party, howsoever powerful and popular, from power. It's a very humbling experience that the people's power has become the most dominant power. Very briefly now, I will define 3 stages of Indian democracy. The first, the politics of want. The second, the politics of identity. And the third, the politics of aspiration. The first, the politics of want. India became free. We have to rescue India from the disease of poverty, give food to the people. The state became the real propeller of development. Investment for roads, for healthcare, for a school, to factory, to dams, to irrigation canals. Ultimately, what happened was that this development, though consistent, became lopsided. Every area could not develop. This gave rise to dissatisfaction. And from that dissatisfaction arose the urge for identity. Regional identity, caste identity, communal identity, and also religious identity. Regional forces came, a smaller party emerged, the national party declined, the one party rule declined, and ultimately it gave rise to coalition politics also. And I am very clear, if those who were deprived or marginalized could not get a say in the democratic polity of India, they have got the right to convey their message. Why not? And ultimately, the polity of India accommodates their aspirations. That's how we have been working. But there were problems also. A regional party in a coalition government, they were having a lot of problems also. Ultimately, there were issues of corruption, malgovernance. And the most interesting part of India's evolution has been that a reform, opening of the economy, was also started when the polity of the country was declining because of this contradiction. It went for some time. And finally, the third phase emerges when the politics of aspiration becomes a dominant component of India's polity. What I mean by politics of aspiration, I would like to explain here. Those who fought for identity raised a question. Yes, I have got my identity recognized, but what beyond this? I want good governance. I want progress. I want development. I want good roads. I want good schools. I want intellectual empowerment. And from there arose the politics of aspiration. And this whole movement ultimately concretized in 2014, when for the first time in 30 years, one party was given a complete absolute majority as embodying the spirit of aspiration when Mr. Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister. You must understand one thing. If one party gets a majority after 30 years, before which only coalition government or no party getting a majority, there is a message behind this. And the message is what? Country wants a change. And the Prime Minister of India was very clear that this popular mandate is to transform India. And he also realized that in order to transform India, I must employ technology. Because technology is the biggest leveler and technology is the biggest facilitator. And he gave a very clarion call in the campaign itself of 2014 when he said, IT plus IT is equal to IT. IT, information technology, plus IT, India's talent, is equal to IT, India tomorrow. That's how we have to use technology to propel India's growth story. And the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, was equally aware that 65% of India is 35 years and below the democratic dividend. I have to use the power of technology, particularly the information technology, to propel India's growth story. Programs like Digital India, Make in India, Startup India, Stand Up India, Skill India are all technology-based programs. On a lighter note, I never expected that he will give this responsibility to me as the IT and Electronics Minister of India to play an important role in this process. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Digital India has two philosophical constructs I would like to clarify here. The first is India may have missed the digital revolution, the entrepreneurial revolution. India may have missed the industrial revolution because we were under foreign rule. India should not miss the digital revolution. On the contrary, India must be a leader in that. That is the first philosophical construct. The second is India's digital story should not be elitist, but India's digital initiative is for digital inclusion, to bridge the digital divide between digital haves and digital have-nots. And thirdly, if we have to get this goal, technology must be affordable, must be inclusive, must be development. Today we are linking 250,000 village councils, Gram Panchayat, by optical fiber network, a huge exercise, nearly complete. The digital profile of India I would like to briefly share. In a population of 1.30 billion, India is home to only 1.21 billion mobile phones, out of which 500 million is smartphones, 400 million. We have got 1.19 billion Aadhaar identity of every Indian, verifiable digital identity backed by a parliamentary law kept in a safe and secure conditions. What is a digital identity? A digital identity supplements your physical identity by your fingerprints and by your iris. And we have also kept due safety of privacy. And the third is about 500 million internet. How we are transforming, again based upon some principle. Banking the unbanked, number one. Funding the unfunded, number two. Pensioning the unpensioned, number three. Securing the unsecure, number four. And giving voice to those whose voice is not heard. In all this, we are using technology. I'll just give you 2-3 very quick points. We opened only 300 million bank accounts of those who were not in bank, the poor people. We linked that to Aadhaar, seeded to their mobile phone. And started sending all their welfare entitlement from ration to fertilizer to kerasan to cooking gas, etc. into their bank accounts. We have saved only $9 billion, which used to be pocketed by middlemen or fictitious persons. Digital governance is good governance. In a modest survey by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, linking all the teachers with Aadhaar, digital identity, we have discovered a very small number of only 80,000 fake teachers who were taking salaries in fictitious names. Digital governance is good governance. We have given 150 million Indians the benefit of low-cost insurance and 100 million Indians a small support from the banks in the shape of loans, those who do very small businesses, to get them empowered. Access to healthcare, access to education, access to e-scholarship, all these initiatives we are doing. I just talked of digital inclusion. I will give 3 examples how we are doing it. We are giving digital literacy to 60 million poor families living in rural areas in 3 years' time. We have already given 10 million people that, and by the year end and next year we will complete that. We have got 270,000 digital kiosks managed by small village level entrepreneurs who are giving digital delivery of services, from banking to insurance to railway ticket to passport to land records, etc. 1 million people work there. Again, digital inclusion. When I became minister, there was a request to me by IT professionals in Bangalore and other areas. Mr. Minister, will you do something we can revert to our small towns to stay? Now, I'm very happy to tell you, I came with a scheme, our government came with a scheme of BPO in small towns. And today, BPO has started operating in places like Guwahati, Kohima, Imphal, Muzaffarpur, Patna, Lucknow, Bareilly, and many other places in India. In South India, Tiruchirappalli, Tirchi, Vellore, Puducherry. What we are doing is empowering people in the hinterland through information technology. Now, what all this is happening? India is emerging as a big digital market. You must understand there are 3 phases of India's digital story. The first was when India's company went abroad in 200 cities of 80 countries and made a mark for themselves. The first phase. The second phase was when the world started coming to India. India is the biggest footprint of WhatsApp, of Facebook, of Twitter, of other mediums. Amazon is rising in India in a very big way. This is the second phase when the world started coming to India. And the third phase is India is becoming a startup movement. Young men, professionally competent, are becoming a startup. And a big Asia head of a big technology company told me, Mr. Minister, I want to give you a good point, good information. Earlier, when I goes to Indian Institute of Technologies to get young professional engineers recruited for my company, the toppers used to rush to me. Now the toppers say, sorry, I want to become a startup. I want to become a job giver, not a job seeker. That is how technology innovates, empowers. That's what we are doing. We are aiming to make India's digital economy a $1 trillion economy in the coming 4 to 5 years. I'm very happy to tell you today that I had a very meaningful meeting with the President, with the Prime Minister, your Minister of Technology and Digital Infrastructure. And there is a greater clarity also in Sri Lanka that we must also properly exploit the potential of digital platform. And my Prime Minister has directed me that please ensure that India's digital story must find resonance. And before this August audience, I have to inform Madam that maybe I am speaking in the memory of very illustrious husband. National Knowledge Network of India is a very powerful tool whereby we have linked up 1,640 universities and institutes of India by their high power internet. Today, we have linked up also to the universities in Sri Lanka. And because with that linkage, lot of new research vehicles of Europe, America will also be available to Sri Lanka and your university and institutions. Digital space does not admit of boundaries. Yes, we have to take guard of cyber security. It is a virtual world beyond geographical world. But that also we are working cyber analysis, cyber policing, cyber drilling. And I want also to indicate here that we are willing to cooperate fully to the government and the people of Sri Lanka in having a safe and secure cyberspace. What is my concluding take for the third phase of India's polity? Where technology will take us, we don't know. And therefore, when you will get my printed speech, some of the observations which I have shared here, you may not find it there. But before this illustrious gathering, I am sharing my vision. trying to get some inspiration from Lakshman Kadirgamar, who used to have a vision as to how the world will unfold. In my very modest way, I'm trying to think that digital technology has limitless potential. The digital platform has got extraordinary potential to transform human being. And I wish to give you only one example. One day, Satamma Devi, a BD Majdoor of Telangana, became digitally literate. What is a BD Majdoor? The lowliest of the low, who folds the raw tobacco for villagers to smoke. It was a great news for me. I tweeted in her support. She became famous. The senior minister has tweeted on her potential. Then she became further popular. Television channels went to her to take her interview. Then I talked to her. She neither knew Hindi nor English, only knew Telugu, the local language. I had to employ an interpreter. I asked him, how did you become digitally literate? She said something remarkable. My son is a plumber in Dubai. I used to miss my grandson. And I was told, if you want to talk to your grandson and also see his face, learn to operate the Skype. And to operate the Skype, I became digitally literate. And now I am also operating laptop. Can you believe that is the innovative spirit which digital technology basically empowers the very ordinary man? In India, we have come with a new platform of soil health card. What is a soil health card? A farmer must know what is the health of his soil. Is it over-fertilized? Is it good for this crop? E-hospital. Common people can click and get appointment. National agriculture market. Today, more than 6.5 million farmers can look into 400 village markets to sell their products. We are committed to further expand this limitless potential of digital platform. And I can tell you what is the real merit of the digital platform. There is no physical boundary. There is no national boundary. Anyone can talk to anyone. What is happening in Latin America, you can talk in Colombo and tomorrow in India. People today are on social media getting empowered. I see digital platform as a big instrument of empowerment. And therefore we are using our digital technology in the quest of strengthening our constitutional and democratic polity. What has been the combined result of all this? According to the World Bank, the Indian economy will grow at 7.3 and become the fastest growing economy in 2018. India has moved 42 places in ease of doing business, jumping 30 points. And we have received the highest foreign direct investment. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the final lesson of the last 70 years? And that is very important. People know they are right. People know who they are. But people give a constant message. You please be accountable and perform and deliver to continue to get our trust. Those who don't perform are shown the door, and those who perform are rewarded. I think that is the biggest humbling lesson of Indian constitutional and democratic polity in the last 70 years. Amidst all the noise and poise, the chaos, the heated exchange, the muscle flexing on the streets, the command of popular will is a great protection against going beyond a point. And those who go beyond a point never have a long term in politics of India. That is also a great message. I will have to quote two eminent Indian thinkers. One is Eminent Srinivas, the eminent Indian sociologist. He called Indian democracy a secular miracle of modern world and a model for other developing countries. And Lord Meghnad Desai, the eminent thinker again, now in London, he said, what makes India survive and thrive is the willingness of people to talk to each other, to take advantage of the ballot box, and to tell their rulers frequently where the limits of their tolerance and patient non-violent conduct are located. I think this, in a very eloquent word, summarizes this beauty of India's story of 70 years. After these 70 years, India's story of constitutional and democratic polity continues to shine like a beacon of hope, of freedom, and of performance. And amidst all the ups and downs, amidst all the limitations and criticisms, the biggest story of this march of 70 years is that the common Indian stands empowered and stands taller. I think that is the great message. Surely, Mr. Lakshman also in his own way was trying to have the same message here and also on the global stage as an outstanding diplomat. My respectful pranam to his great memory. And with these words, I conclude my speech. Long live India-Sri Lanka friendship. Thank you.